watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are here on episode 92 of the podcast. We are diving back into the Indiana Jones well today. So exciting as we continue in our Spielberg series today, covering Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I'm excited to have a new guest joining me today. Jacob Allen is joining me, and yeah, Jacob, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So Jacob, me and Jacob got connected kind of through, there's a publication called Think Christian that does a lot of like pop culture and faith stuff, and they do like a little movie club every once in a while, and we kind of got connected through that. We both attended one of those, and probably a few. We've probably both been in a few together. Yeah. And so that's how we got connected, and both love to talk about movies, and and Jacob even has a new creative endeavor of his own. So do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about what you're up to with your podcast and your Substack and all that?
Definitely. Yeah. Several months ago, I kind of had the urge to create a platform for myself to express and just kind of explore and process some of my own sort of creative or spiritual ponderings. And something I'm passionate about is just the convergence of spirituality and creativity. And I think particularly in religious contexts, this is a generalization, but in religious contexts, I feel, maybe the creative pursuit of the divine is maybe undervalued. And that was just, I found myself thinking about those things a lot. And so wanted to give myself a way to process those. And so using Substack, I just started a small publication that I call Lean Forward. And just the idea of Lean Forward is slowing down long enough to kind of take a breath and think and lean in and just, ponder about some of the more mysterious elements of our faith, which I find, a really natural way to get at some of those elements is through creativity. And, just a natural approach for me is film and music. So in Lean Forward, I tend to talk a lot about and write a lot about film and music. And, from the beginning of Lean Forward, and this isn't fully realized yet, I kind of had the vision that it might become sort of like an umbrella media company for, a few different endeavors. So whether that be film or, like music production or podcasting, those are three things that I again, kind of my grand vision of Lean Forward is those three things fall under the umbrella. And, thinking about, okay, well, what's the easiest thing for me to do right now is probably create a podcast. And so start thinking about, what I might like to cover in that podcast. And, the first thing that came to mind was Bob Dylan. And I, just love Bob Dylan and just pretty big Dylan head, and also grew up on the Beatles as well. And I think in Bob Dylan and John Lennon, there are some moments in history that just kind of stick in my head, almost like scenes from a movie. And, I think my fascination with them stems from sort of a fascination with pop culture in general, and how, for better or worse, pop culture drives culture at large. And so my thinking is, by understanding the relationship between these two individuals that shaped the pop culture waters that we swim in now, we might have a better idea of how to navigate just the cultural waters that we're in today as well. So I'm in the process of writing and releasing kind of in real time the first season of the Conversation podcast. So that's the name of the podcast. And season 1 is covering the relationship between Bob Dylan and John Lennon.
Cool.
And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've released one episode, but it's been really rewarding so far. I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah, I was able to listen to about half of it. I was telling Jacob before we started recording, and so I'm enjoying it. It's it's like a essay style podcast, which I really enjoy when those are like well put together. And yeah, it really is. You include some kind of like music interludes and stuff.
Yeah,
if I'm remembering correctly, that are kind of like well produced, and so yeah, definitely go check out. And you mentioned it. It's called The Conversation.
Yeah. So
and so
probably the easiest way to both lean forward and the conversation are through Instagram. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll link all those in the episode description
for sure,
so that people can find them easily. But yeah, it's really cool. And what better time to dig into Bob Dylan than after the success of A Complete Unknown.
I know. I didn't.
Did you enjoy that?
So okay, you're gonna have to forgive me. I haven't seen it yet. And,
Oh no!
That was one of those where having a 6-month-old just it just did not. It's like
hard.
There are movies that I know my wife won't want to see, so I'll go see those in theaters by myself. But that was one of the ones that she did want to see, and it's as hard as it is for me to get away for an evening at the movies, it's even harder for her. So we just haven't caught it yet. But everybody that I tell that I'm making a podcast about Bob Dylan, that's the first thing they ask me. So I've told so many people like, I haven't seen it yet.
But there's a lot of Bob there. Like I actually went and saw it, and then I went on like a Bob Dylan kick. So I watched.
I saw something that you posted on the socials about the Bob Dylan kind of kick.
Yeah. I watched a couple of the documentaries. I watched the who's the director of that movie with the various actors playing? Is it Todd Haynes?
Yes, Todd Haynes. Thanks.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Oh, it was great. It was so like weird. I loved it.
As weird as a movie about Bob Dylan should be.
Yeah. There's Kate Blanchett plays one of the Bob Dylans, which is great.
Yeah, it's awesome, and she just like nails his voice. I mean, just everything. Yeah. She nailed his mannerisms. It's awesome. Yeah, Bob's like really in the cultural consciousness right now, which I'm like always thinking about Bob, and so I don't know if what prompted the idea for the podcast was just seeing him out there because of the movie and all that, or if it was just kind of naturally sprang from my own like musings about him. But
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think probably so. Yeah.
I mean, it's like as much as we want to be like, I guess like pure in our artistic endeavors, there's also like an element of like what is the most marketable right now. So
well, definitely. And I've even thought, well, I hear that there's a Beatles movie coming out too. So
or a series of Beatles movies. Actually,
is that right? Okay, yeah.
So I think I heard that there was going to be several. By is it Mendes?
I did.
Is it Sam Mendes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and we'll get a little different Kate Blanchett accent in our talk today.
Oh my word, that's true. Great segue.
But before we do get into that, I do love to ask my guests about their kind of introduction to the director we're covering. So, do you have like any memories from your childhood or maybe it was teenage, I don't know, of Spielberg? What was your like earliest memories?
Yeah, my earliest memory of Spielberg was watching Hook. So Hook, how like in childhood there might be a summer where you watch the same movie over and over and over again like, every day of the summer. There was a summer when I was, really little, probably first or second grade, where we watched Hook over and over again. And I know Hook just kind of is not regarded as one of his best and is often regarded as one of his worst. But I think I'm like of the age where I saw it at the right age that it's just like it's an amazing movie. And so I watched Hook before I really knew who Steven Spielberg was.
Right.
Or before I knew what a director was.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't really looking out for, the man behind the movie. And I haven't seen Hook in years, and since childhood. So if I
Yeah.
revisited it, I'm sure I would see the Spielbergisms come out of it, and I
Sure.
might also see those quibbles that people have with it. But
Yeah.
it's right now it's kind of frozen in my mind as just a great movie. But I think the first time that I saw a Spielberg movie and was like, oh, that's Spielberg, was probably seeing Saving Private Ryan
Mm.
at around I don't know, 12, maybe 12 or 13. I think I know it was like the first R-rated movie I ever saw, and
Mm.
it was my dad's favorite movie, and so I kind of knew that I was going to grow into it at some point.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the movie that was on the horizon. I was looking forward to getting to watch it, and it was at about that time that I was like discovering what IMDb was, and so I could watch
Sure.
a movie and just see everybody involved. So I think Saving Private Ryan around 2008 or so was probably the first time that I saw a Spielberg movie and thought, okay, that's Spielberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you didn't really grow up with like the Indiana Jones movies necessarily, like a lot of people do.
Well, no, now that you say that, I did grow. There was a period, like I do remember being introduced to Indiana Jones.
Okay.
So, and it's funny, but until you said that, Hook was my kind of like honest to goodness first thought. So
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why that is, but no, I mean, I do have memories of spending the night at friends' houses and watching Indiana Jones, and I even have like a memory of introducing a friend like on like a sleepover night. I was at a friend's house and I showed him Indiana Jones, and it was clear that his mom like didn't really approve or didn't really, and so it was like I remember this like awkward feeling of like, oh gosh, sorry, but which it's Indiana Jones. There's nothing too objectionable in there, but
Yeah.
but no, and I don't know at what point I made the connection between Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg. I think I honestly probably made this connection, the George Lucas connection between Indiana Jones and Star Wars before I made the Spielberg connection. But
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember what I've talked about in the past Indiana.
Sure.
It's been a while since I've covered an Indiana Jones movie at this point. But I mean, I saw the movies growing up at some point, but I didn't like grow up with those being like such strong movies like probably like my parents' generation did,
Sure. Yeah.
or even really the like I'm a younger millennial, I guess, and so probably like even like older millennials more had like Indiana Jones was a strong part of their childhood, 80s kids.
Yeah. What year were you born?
91.
Okay. Yeah, I was born in 94. Yeah. Well, yeah, my wife, we rewatched Crystal Skull a couple nights ago, and my wife was like, "Are you surprised that people still like these movies?" Because I made the comment of like it's kind of silly and
Yeah, sure.
but not in a bad way, And
Right,
she's like,
right.
"Are you surprised that people still like these movies?" And I don't know this for a fact, but I was like, I wonder if, back in the 80s, if it was like cooler, if just the whole idea was cooler, and now it's nostalgia,
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I love them. I've had a blast revisiting them.
Yeah. I mean, they are like, and we'll talk about it in this one especially. How they all kind of have a little bit of silliness to them. But yeah, I guess a spoiler of like the future of this talk is like I like this movie, and
Me too.
I kind of feel like a lot of the criticisms of this movie, like you could apply those criticisms to all the Indiana Jones films, so I feel like it's unfair to apply them to this one.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get into that. That's a kind of, I guess, a sneak peek into later in the conversation.
For sure.
But we do, like we always do, start at the beginning, which is Indiana Jones, Henry Jones Jr. and Henry Jones Sr. riding off into the sunset at the end of The Last Crusade. Spielberg talked about in the special features for this movie how like there was a reason he ended that movie that way. It's because for all intents and purposes, he felt like he was done with Indiana Jones. Him and Lucas, if you've listened to past episodes, you might remember, they kind of from the beginning agreed to 3 films, and they made those 3 films. And I think Spielberg probably thought like, okay, we're done with Indiana Jones, but they did start making some TV series with the young Indiana Jones. I've never seen it. Have you ever seen any of those? I have not.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
I honestly don't plan to either.
I like to keep certain things sacred.
Yeah.
Like my Indiana Jones.
Yeah. So those movies are a thing. I mean, those TV series are a thing. And some kind of TV movies too. I think there's some of them are just like TV movies. And really the gestation of this particular Indiana Jones film kind of began from Lucas seeing Ford return for one of those episodes. So it was in 93. He was in an episode. It was like a longer episode called The Mystery of the Blues. I don't know anything about the movie except I saw a screenshot of the guy who plays the young Indiana Jones playing a saxophone, and I was like, I do not think I want to watch this movie, this show or whatever. And but in that episode, Harrison Ford plays like the 50-year-old version of Indiana Jones, and Lucas saw this and he was like, I wonder if we could do like another movie with just Indiana Jones older, like kind of a more matured, and see where it takes us. So that's kind of like.
So it started with Lucas?
Yeah. So
okay.
So Lucas kind of had this idea way back in 93 when that episode came out, and he was like, there might be something here to do a movie with a more mature, older Indy. So
that's interesting. 93 was the year The Fugitive came out as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in Harrison Ford world.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He had Harrison Ford as another sneak peek into next week. We're going to be doing a Harrison Ford performances draft. So Harrison Ford, as me and Jacob are familiar, preparing for that draft, was very busy in the like mid 80s to mid 90s, like very, very busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really like Ford and Spielberg were kind of resistant at first, but as we know, Lucas can be pretty persistent, and he was getting some writers to write some screenplays for it. Didn't really have anything. He did have ideas that he kind of like already from the like early in the process wanted incorporated. One was the Crystal Skull. So there was like a unfinished script of the TV show that had something to do with a crystal skull, and he really liked that idea and that kind of mythology, and so that was really early on. Like he wanted that in the movie.
Cool.
Yeah, and just like all the like Indiana Jones MacGuffins, the crystal skull is like based in something that is a real thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there's the most famous one apparently was found in 1924 by a British traveler and his daughter in Belize. There's like,
cool.
It's a very like apparent, this is my knowledge off of very, very minimal research on this. But they're apparently like very ambiguous circumstances that these things were discovered under. And so like it's not really known, like even like one of the things I read put discovered in quotes, like quote unquote discovered.
I don't know what that means, but...
So I think like the question is like, were these things like discovered from some ancient thing, or were they like planted or like made up?
Yeah.
Like they're actual like real crystal skulls, but did someone like make them and then like come up with this story of how they found it and it's something ancient?
Yeah.
So So it's like pretty ambiguous, like history behind these things, but they are a real thing, and they're like they're associated. They got like associated with like New Age folklore and stuff, and so yeah. And then of course, along with the Crystal Skull, Lucas really wanted to do something with aliens. So I think his thoughts was along the lines of, okay, the first movies are like in the 30s and early 40s, and they kind of like go along with like the serial episodes of that time. And so like if we're doing an older Jones, he would be in the 50s, which the movie is set in. And the kind of like pop serials of that time were like B sci-fi stuff.
Interesting.
And
that's one of the first things that strikes me watching it is like, not knowing any of the background that you just laid out. It does seem like an interesting fusion of Spielberg's preoccupations. So I almost might have wanted to assume that the alien thing, the alien element, was Spielberg's input initially. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, so one of the funny things is like Spielberg, when the movies got kind of like mixed to negative reception, Spielberg kind of like admitted that he kind of all along wasn't sure about the MacGuffin stuff. He wasn't like super sure about it, but like just trusted Lucas and went with it. So, which I don't know I don't know how he felt about the aliens exactly, but the MacGuffin part, he was like not so sure about like if that would work well or not, but like trusted the process. And
when you say MacGuffin, the skull itself,
like the skull is the MacGuffin. Yeah.
I think it works well enough.
Yeah, I think so. And it makes sense that it's like, okay, we're gonna have this crystal skull. We're gonna like do homage to like the 50s B alien sci-fi movies. And then like, of course, Spielberg was not interested in doing Nazis as like bad guys anymore after Schindler's List. And so, which understandably so. Yeah. And so like, that was kind of off the table already. But then when you set it in the 50s, it just makes sense to go with Russia as the bad guys and tap into the Cold War. So those are all of these ideas were like floating around from pretty early on. Interesting. And it really took, from what I could tell, like in the early 2000s is when Spielberg was finally like kind of convinced to return to Indiana Jones. Partly by Lucas being persistent. And then partly too, Ford had like called him up and was like, I think this would be a really good idea for us to like jump back into this. There's fans, Ford, I think jokingly talks about like he's in it for the money, but also it's kind of tongue in cheek. I think he really is sometimes in it for the money.
He seemed legitimately happy to be along for the ride on this one, though.
For sure.
I feel like that comes through in his performance.
Yeah, and so like it is. So Spielberg, Lucas, and Ford. One of the crazy things about the Indiana Jones, they both like own 11% of Indiana Jones. So between the three of them, that's like 30% of all the Indiana Jones stuff goes to them, which Spielberg and Lucas kind of like invented that idea as far as like being a filmmaker goes, like owning, like taking revenue instead of a salary, for your films. It's pretty rare for like the actor to like have a stake in it like that. And along with that stake also comes like the power to say like, no, we're not making the movie. So like if it really all three of them had to be on board to make the movie, if one of them said no, then they couldn't do it. Yeah.
It's fitting for this to be the movie where an actor would have that kind of stake, because it's how do you separate Indiana Jones from Harrison Ford?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we might talk about that at some point in,
Yeah,
in
we
this
might.
discussion too. And so, yeah, so, you know, the other thing I read was that Spielberg's kids kind of wanted him to make another one. And
Oh,
so,
that's funny.
yeah. And really, like, if you think about it, all the movies he made, like, from starting with, like, I mean, for a while, he'd been making pretty serious movies. Like, the only exception would maybe be The Terminal, is pretty, like, unserious.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, a serious, like, undertone in it, but pretty unserious as a movie.
Yeah, it's fairly light. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, they're all of the movies, even like a fun movie like Catch Me If You Can, is like very much like coated with like divorce and
Yeah. It's dark. It's a dark
yeah.
movie.
And so yeah, and you know, he's coming off of like one of his most controversial, tough like movies that he ever made with Munich.
Yeah.
And so like he also kind of was like, okay, I can probably use a break and have a more like recreational movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, so they all got on board. Frank Darabont, who's probably most popular for writing The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, also directed those, I think. I think he wrote and directed both of those. But those are what he's popular for. But he had written several episodes of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And so Lucas had commissioned some scripts from him. He did like several rewrites, and it didn't work for Lucas and Spielberg, I guess. And so, yeah, so he did come up with the idea of Indy having an offspring. I think in his version it was a daughter. And then like his version had Marion more part of the plot which this is interesting. Instead of the Mac character, which we get in the film, the Marion's husband kind of played in that role. So there was this like weird dynamic of like Marion and her husband being like the double crosser guy.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I honestly think like, I wonder if I would like to see that version. That
For
sounds
sure.
interesting, like an interesting dynamic, a triangle there.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also the bad guy was a Russian, but he was like a Russian guy that Indy had like worked with in the past, but they had kind of split down different paths.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because there was a point where like Russia and the US were like on the same side. If you think of like the world wars, like a common enemy kind of thing. But then obviously Russia, that this path split at some point. And so, that makes sense, but that is not the script we ended up with. But the bones of the script we did get were kind of started with Darabont. And this is really interesting. Shyamalan actually was working on a script at some point.
Whoa.
M. Night Shyamalan, the man himself.
That now to think of that seems, laughable. But at the time, at that point in Shyamalan's career, I feel like people were still wondering if he was going to be the next Spielberg.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
no, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So that may be quite as shocking as you would think.
Yeah. Yeah. So he actually gave up. Like what I read was he gave up because of the difficulty of setting up working meetings with 3 overworked celebrities.
My word. That's so funny.
Yeah.
He must have been frustrated if he was going to give up on an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah. But also at that time, Lucas was like trying to wrap up the prequel trilogy with Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And so I can imagine trying to like get him nailed down to try to work on this Indiana Jones script was like pretty difficult. So,
for sure.
So Shyamalan got frustrated and was like, I'm out.
That's so funny.
But the final adaptation we ended up getting was commissioned to David Koepp. It's the screenplay we actually like end up with for this movie. He's the one that adds Irina Spalko, the Cate Blanchett character, Lucas kind of had insisted that Indy have a son and that he be like a young rebel with a motorcycle and leather jacket, kind of some generational conflict thing. And so he incorporates
But I
that
thought it
into
was
the
nice.
script.
I really
Yeah.
thought that worked really well.
Yeah. 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 And then, yeah, Spielberg's like, okay, if we're doing this, we're going to stick to the same like directing, editing, action style of the originals. He really wanted it to feel in line with those. Kind of tells Lucas that like he's trying to keep digital effects to the minimum, which I find ironic because the opening shot is a CGI prairie dog.
I know. I mean, okay. So overall, I am sure we'll get into this. Overall, I thought the effects were fine, but
Yeah.
it gets off to a rough start with that
Yeah.
prairie dog.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll definitely. I have a lot of notes on the special. There's like a whole like 20-minute special feature about the effects for this one.
Okay,
So
that's funny.
so I have a lot of notes on that. We'll definitely talk about it. The crew will be very familiar. Frank Marshall, of course, producing. Kathleen Kennedy not on the list as producers, which was surprising to me.
But I think she was. I noticed Kathleen Kennedy when, like, I think it was the opening credits in the movie. Did you
Maybe
notice that?
so. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the main source I use for like the crew information, sometimes like it leaves people out. I've noticed.
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe she was. I'm trying to
I
look
think she was
in
I
the.
think she was in the opening credits.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just left her out. No, it's not showing it on Letterboxd either. It has, yeah, it has some other people listed, but not her. The other person my source listed was he's not like a producer, but he was a producer for. They got some like footage in Brazil. And so he was the producer for that. His name was Flavio Ramos Tambolini. So the aerial unit producer for the Brazil, like they got some like plates to add effects into and stuff to get some jungle shots. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, as we mentioned, the screenplay was by David Koepp, who David Koepp has an interesting career. He's written he wrote Jurassic Park, so he'd worked with Indy before. I mean, with Spielberg before. But yeah, he has a very interesting career. If you like look at his just his filmography, he's written Spider-Man, Mission Impossible, Death Becomes Her, Panic Room, Carlito's Way.
How funny.
Yeah,
Trying to
very
track a through line there would be a difficult task.
yeah. It's tough.
But there's some bangers in there though.
Yeah, and actually he wrote a movie from this year, Presence, which I saw and really actually loved.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet. That's the Soderbergh, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I'm eager to see it though.
yeah. I it's funny because it does feel like one of those movies that it either works for you or doesn't.
Yeah.
And which so like for people that are like I didn't go for it, I'm like I understand, but it worked really well for me. I loved it.
Cool.
But yeah, David Koepp, interesting career. But yeah, he wrote this one. And then we've got like a bunch of guys that are like typical, like go-to dudes. Janusz Kaminski as the director of photography, Michael Kahn as the editor, John Williams, the man, the myth, the legend for the music, Ron Judkins and Ben Burt for the sound. So it's always good to see Ben Burt coming back. So Ben Burt actually worked on Munich too. So he hadn't worked with Spielberg since the original Indy films until Munich. So cool to see him back.
Yeah. Back in
Production design by Guy Hendricks Diaz. And he's I'm trying to remember if he's worked with Spielberg before. His name was familiar. And I'm kind of doing some great podcasting work, vamping to see if I can find him in this list, and I'm not finding him. So I can't remember if he's worked with Spielberg before. It kind of seems like he did, but maybe not. Nope, had not, because I just looked it up. Yeah, but yeah, I think he did a great job with the production design for this movie.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I thought that was a real strong point of the movie.
Yeah, art direction by Mark W. Mansbridge. And then you have your effects guys. Pablo Hellman was the VFX guy. He's a George Lucas's company, ILM. He's an ILM guy, and he worked on War of the Worlds. So with Spielberg, so he has some experience there. And then I'm trying to see this. There's another guy, Daniel Sudick, who did the special effects. And I'm trying to see if he's worked with Spielberg before too. Usually I do this before recording, but our listeners have the great privilege of listening to me figure it out live today. But yeah, that's the crew.
I'll be a number cruncher if you'd like me to. You just keep talking. I'll just.
Daniel Sudick, I did not see him, so it'll just be a mystery if he's worked with Spielberg before. But yeah, I mean, the main guys that are like the Spielberg dudes
you
are
expect to be there.
They're there. Kaminsky, Kahn, and Williams, and then really Judkins too. Judkins has worked a ton with him on his sound, and for an action movie, adventure movie like this, the sound is pretty important. So
yeah.
Let's talk about the cast, because it's surprisingly a pretty like small cast to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very few very few characters of any like incident at all.
Right. Surprisingly.
Yep. But of course Harrison Ford,
so
Indiana Jones.
He was 65 at the point of this movie's release. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember if he was 65 at the release or at the shooting, but
sure.
It was shot because I think it was shot end of 2007.
Okay.
So he was either 65 or 66 when it released.
What's so funny about that is I remember, so this was my first time rewatching it since it was out in theaters. So I saw it in theaters and I hadn't seen it again until a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it in theaters and thinking he looks so old. But watching it the other night, I was like, he looks young.
Is it because you've seen Dial of Destiny?
It's got to be just because, we all know what he looks like. I mean, he looks old now. Like now he looks old.
Now he looks real old.
Yeah. So I'm sure that, and I was just struck by like this movie came out almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's 20-ish years younger.
I guess 17 years ago now.
Yeah, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, he was 17 years younger than he is now. So he would.
Yeah.
But I was struck, honestly, by how youthful he looked.
Yeah. I mean, so he was 65, Spielberg 61. They're both pretty. They're both at this point in their careers very active still. Like, like the Harrison Ford had kind of slowed down. I guess in the 2000s, I would say.
What was the movie with Brendan Fraser that he was in? I'm trying to think of something else that might have come out in this era.
Yeah, I mean, he was really like the movies. There, it's hard to think of those movies in the.
For sure, it is.
In the two, I mean, 42 wasn't even until 2013.
Later. Yeah.
So, I don't even know
Extraordinary Measures is the one that I'm thinking about, and that was in 2010.
Yeah, and that's not even. I think Firewall would have been the one, but that was like a flop.
Yeah,
that was 2006, and I've never seen that. But yeah, so I mean, this is really like, I guess, like a resurgence for a second wind, I guess, for Ford.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And one of the funny like fun fact things I found is, so in my book resource, Frank Marshall says that like Harrison Ford went on a strict diet so that he could fit into the original costumes. But on the special features, Harrison Ford in the interview says that they shipped him the costume and he
Oh
just
my
like
word.
put it on and it fit.
Yeah, imagine that.
So I kind of lean toward believing Frank Marshall on this one.
I believe him as well.
Yeah. But
That's so
it was really fun. So I watched the special features first and heard Ford say that, and I was like, "Oh, that's crazy that it still fit him just right." And then I read in my book resource it's right here if you're watching the podcast. It's above me. It's called All the Films, and in that resource, Frank Marshall's like, "Yeah, he went on a strict diet." I'm like, "Now that's funny. The discrepancy there." But yeah, I mean, Ford, he said like the whip came back to him easily, like kind of like riding a bike.
I
He's
read that he had to put his foot down with some of the Paramount execs
mm,
who, for safety reasons, they're like, "Oh, we can just CGI the whip; it'll be no big deal," and that was
No.
like he wouldn't have it.
yeah,
And he insisted on. He was like, "Oh, those safety rules, those are dumb rules. Like,
yeah,
we're not going to CGI the whip."
yeah. And I can imagine Spielberg was backing him on that one. Because like, why
Probably so.
CGI something when you don't have to, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, he still is doing like most of his stunts in this movie, which
Mhm.
there's not as much in this one. You
Mhm.
can tell the difference.
But he's just, I mean, he's just derpy as ever in his stunts, just
Mm-hmm.
so ungraceful.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like,
Yeah.
he's just the most, um, just unconventional action star.
Yeah.
You know, he's like an action star, but that's just part of his charm is that he's not great at it.
Well, he's like, and we'll talk about this like when we talk about Harrison Ford in general when we do the movie draft. But like, he's like the kind of action movie star where like just normal guys like me or you could look at him doing action scenes and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah,
trying to do a stunt
that would
is
be
what it
me if I was in that situation." Like,
Yeah, I just go crashing through that piece of glass. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, if I had the courage to do it, then that would be me, like being clumsy and like falling into just the right situation at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's a trait of Indy's that they hit
Yeah.
on in this one is that he doesn't ever have a plan.
Right.
He just goes for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kind of play into that with like the Shia character too, when he like brings back the snake to the dry sand pit and
Yeah, yeah,
he just rolling with it. But yeah, you know, we had talked about Harrison Ford, you know, being excited to do this again. And real like if you can find interviews where he talks about like this is his favorite character that he's ever played. And you know, it makes sense because it's kind of like an outlet for him to have the best of both worlds cuz you know, he's not like a derpy just action guy. He's like he's an intelligent dude. And so he gets with this character to play like an intellectual,
yeah,
like a guy that's like a professor, but also like plays into the strengths he has as an actor,
Yeah.
which is definitely like the action, the quippy lines, like
right.
that. Those are his strengths.
I loved the bit where they're on a chase, like it's the motorcycle chase through the college campus, and they come to a kind of a screeching halt in the library, and one of his students sees him and asks him like a question about an assignment.
Yeah.
And it's to your point, it's like it is the combination of the action, and he gets to be intellectual with this student, and you know it's so funny. Yeah, there's like a coalescence right there in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
Both of those traits. Yeah.
I think that's where is that where he screams out, "You've got to get out of the library."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, love it. A very indie line as well. And yeah, other players you have. Let's do talk about Karen Allen because it was great to see her back in this movie playing Marion Ravenwood. Yeah, I loved seeing her back in the indie movies.
It felt a lot like their reunion moment. Felt a lot like the Princess Leia reunion moment in The Force Awakens, though.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of like similar chemistry
For sure.
with like, yeah, Han and Leia, and then Indy and Marion for sure. And I think in the Raiders episode, I talked about how I noticed the score like for Marion's theme and for Leia's theme is very similar.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they have like a similar kind of sound, and even like the melody, like the main melody for those themes kind of even have a few notes that are like that follow the same trajectory. Yeah. Yeah, it's something I noticed. I was like, John Williams is a smart dude. He knows how to recycle stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Karen Allen was contacted at the start of 2007, and in the special features, she's like, it's real cute. She's like talking about how she had imagined, being in an Indiana Jones movie again for a while, but just thought that would never happen. And then she gets the call and it's like, yeah, absolutely. And she was like, oh, I expected like a cameo or whatever. But then she read the script and she was like, oh, I have like a lot to do. So, but then she had to keep it secret for 6 months because they kept this like under wraps pretty tight. So
It'd be a hard thing to keep secret.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other like indie related character would be Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Williams. Probably one of my favorite things that's like not a joke in the movie, but made me chuckle is how Mutt tells Indiana Jones his name is Mutt, and Indy like responds with like bewilderment of like what kind of name is Mutt, and then he's like defensive and he's like, I chose this name, and I'm like, so why are you why did you could be defensive if someone gave you that name, but not if you chose it.
Well, it's personal. He takes it personal. It's like the criticism of his personal choice.
Yeah. But I'm like, but you could have gone with anything and you chose Mutt.
Totally
so
yeah, that is so funny.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Mutt Williams. Spielberg was an executive producer on Transformers. And I think Spielberg probably saw Shia LaBeouf as like his next big star that he could like use a bunch. That's just like the vibe that seems like was around this whole movie and this casting.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about why that didn't happen later on. But yeah, it's Shia LaBeouf. He didn't really get a lot of screen time in the special features, but he just, and I think it's partly because like the like kind of rumors are that he was more difficult on set to deal with. And like him and Harrison Ford didn't really get along a whole lot. So, which makes sense for Shia LaBeouf during this period of his career. Kind of like in hindsight, we kind of know like stuff he was dealing with. And, so, it's hard to like, it's easy to kind of have sympathy for Shia LaBeouf, even though he was apparently a pain.
Yeah, certainly. I thought his character and their chemistry in the movie was nice, though.
Yeah, it's like it's reminiscent. I guess the problem for me was like it's reminiscent of the chemistry between Ford and Connery, but like way like lower. Like doesn't meet that mark at all. Like it makes you think of it, which is actually like not a good thing because the chemistry of Ford and Connery was incredible. So I think that kind of like works against that character in the movie is like, it's hard to live up to the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery.
An iconic duo. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like they're very obviously like trying to riff on like that generational thing of like, Connery's father to Ford's like son, and then transitioning that. Like they're very obviously like trying to play into that. And so, yeah, to me, it just like worked against it, unfortunately. But
Yeah. We'll talk
but
about
yeah,
that.
they did try to get Connery back, but Connery was just like, oh, it's too small a role. I'm not interested. And so
So they,
he-
yeah, so they,
so they put him as a
he-
picture.
He's dead.
Yeah, so he's dead. Which I mean makes sense. He would have been old enough to be like makes sense that he would be passed away at this point, I guess. But,
Yeah, certainly.
and then of course the other major player. Well, I guess there's one more. The other one that I have a lot of notes on is Kate Blanchett as Irina Spalko. And Kate Blanchett's just great. Like, I don't really care what she does. She just is kind of fun to watch. She really she's doing, I read like one of her inspirations was Colonel Rosa Klebb from, the Bond movie From Russia with Love. I think that's the second one.
Yeah.
The second Bond movie. So,
Yeah.
which I've seen, but it's been a while. So
Yeah. It's
I don't
so
know how
funny.
close that was.
It's so funny that, and I'm, looking at your notes too, so I'm sorry, I'm not trying to steer your thunder, but it's
No,
like
yeah.
this whole, it's so, and this is part of the charm and what we love about Indiana Jones. It's so goofy, and there are the caricatures are so heightened. So it's so funny to think of an actor of the caliber of Kate Blanchett reading the script, seeing how over the top her character would be, and just being like, I'm locked in.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes me like her all the more,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
And
she does seem like an actor that's always just kind of been game for whatever.
oh yeah. She's just like, I'm all in, and I'm just going to do this to like the nth degree, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's why she basically is Lydia Tarr now. Cause she like made that character feel like a real person.
Yeah.
But yeah, she even talked about like looking at 50s yearbooks and picking a haircut out for this character.
I noticed the haircut. That was,
yeah.
I mean, that was a great touch to her character for sure.
Oh yeah. But yeah, she's great in the movie. Ray Winstone, I guess, would be the other major character throughout the movie as George McMahon. I think he's just like serviceable.
For sure. I like Ray Winston.
Yeah.
His character's arc was a little bit like, felt like a bit of a contrivance. Like, he's revealed to be, he reveals himself to Indy as a double agent. And you're like, okay, that's a complete story arc. Like, we've gone 3/4 of this movie thinking that you had just double crossed, Indy, to find out that you've been with him all along. Okay, that's great. Like, we can ride that wave through the rest of the movie. And then, in the last
triple cross.
Exactly. It's like, okay, you needed somebody to point the gun at them.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, okay. Whatever.
I was like, why couldn't you just have had like them catch up to them at just the right moment?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or have them never have like reasserted his allegiance to Indy. Like, you just could have just cut that out, and they could have been. It would have been just fine for Ray Winston to have double-crossed Indy and have stayed in that camp the whole movie.
Yeah, it is what it is. He's serviceable. Like he's got some funny like line readings that are fun, and
he's an enjoyable, engaging actor to watch.
For sure.
Yeah.
Some. Drink some water. Some more like minor characters that kind of might just pop up. Well, one of them is throughout Igor Janinkin, which I probably butchered that name. is like he's like the main like Russian heavy guy.
Okay. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the character's name is apparently Antonin Dovchenko. No,
Never heard that name.
I don't think they say that name in the movie. So, but he's like the Russian heavy that's like all through the movie. So figured I'd give him a shout out. And then you have John Hurt as Professor Harold Oxley. I guess he comes in at the end as a pretty major player.
Yeah.
And he's good. I think he does what he needs to do well for the movie.
He's another character kind of like Kate Blanchett, where I was just like, an artist of your caliber.
Yeah.
I felt like he embraced his role.
Playing a madman.
I really liked him. I liked his character a lot.
Yeah. And then Jim Broadbent as Dean Charles Stanforth, which I could have told you he was the dean, but I couldn't have told you his name. He's fine telling Indy that he's lost his job. I say that he does deliver like one of the better lines of the movie at one point.
I made note of that as well. Oh, he says, we seem to have reached the age when life stops giving you things and starts taking them away.
Yeah, which is a good line. It's a well-written line, and he delivers it like solid, like
he sure
with
does.
just like
you'd expect him to.
Yeah, with the right weight, I guess, behind it.
The right amount of sincerity.
Yeah. So, he's not in the movie very much at all, but like when he's there, he gets the job done very well. So, Broadbent, well done,
Hi. Quick reminder that you can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show.
But yeah, let's jump into the production. The production of this movie was 84 days from June 18th to October 11th, 2007. And so if you know when it was released, which was May of the next year, you're like, wow, that's actually kind of far away, because a lot of times Spielberg would roll over movies pretty quickly. But this had a lot of digital effects stuff they had to work on, so it was a long post. But yeah, Spielberg, a quote I wrote down from him was, once production started, it was like no time had passed at all, which is fun to hear,
Do you think that speaks to the fun that he was having?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Cool.
Yeah, it's he's jumping back into this thing that basically like was a part of what made him who he is, and with like all the like actors from then, like probably a lot of the same crew. So he was probably just having a lot of fun. Muscle memory as far as like how to film it and stuff. So they had a few locations for this movie. In New Mexico, they shot on location. They built a 1.5 kilometer road for the opening. So that's fun. Lucas really wanted to like introduce Indy in a unique circumstances.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, put him in the trunk, and that's how we'll introduce him. So, which is, I was reading that and I was like, okay, like that is unique in that we've never seen Indy in a trunk before, but technically, well, okay, I guess the first time we ever meet Indy, he's not like captured, but he is like being hunted. So, so not, it's like similar, I guess, not exactly so.
Foreign.
Yeah. But yeah, so they shoot in New Mexico on location. They go to Yale University and get some like campus shots. And I'm pretty sure the library shot is at Yale.
Yeah,
So
my wife and I recently had the chance to visit Yale because we have a
oh,
friend
cool.
that's there, and we were there in July of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty recently, and I was just like, that looks very familiar. And even there were shots of the earlier parts of that chase sequence where they're driving through New Haven.
Yeah.
I was like, that looks like New Haven. And and in that library, we went to the library, and so I looked up the location, and it was Yale. That was cool to see it show up in a movie.
Yeah,
So
it's fun to like notice places in movies.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So yeah, they did do that stuff at Yale, and I guess around a little bit around Yale too. And then they did Hawaii as a stand-in for Peru. So if you're familiar with what we've covered in the past, they did some Hawaii shooting for past indie movies. So
okay, cool.
and in fact, the original mountain to Paramount like fade what fade was a mountain in Hawaii that they found.
Oh,
so
okay, cool.
yep. Back to Hawaii, which I guess it's fun to go to Hawaii and shoot in Hawaii. It's got to be nice.
Indiana Jones movie in Hawaii.
And then after that they went back to LA. They were working kind of out of 4 different studios for the interiors and some of those set pieces, some of the jungle set pieces, the pyramid set pieces, stuff like that. The working title I thought was funny was just genre for this movie. And
that's funny.
Yeah, they really Spielberg's always like pretty secretive and like keeps things under wrap for his productions, but this one they especially were because
really didn't want anyone to know anything about it.
Right. And yeah, they do as much digital effects as there are in this movie. There is a good bit of like real sets. I
appreciated that watch.
Yeah.
Like that really stood out to me in a positive way on this rewatch. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can notice when you do like, when you tune into that sort of thing, you can notice like, okay, these are actual like real sets that they're interacting with. It's not just all this digital stuff that you get a lot of today.
Yeah.
So for the cinematography, camera work, all that, Spielberg spent a lot of time with Janusz Kaminski, like watching the originals, studying the lighting work and all that, because Douglas Slocum, who was the DP for the original trilogy, was retired. And so Kaminski, which I assume, that made me, when I was reading that, it made me assume that if Slocum wasn't retired, that Spielberg probably would have brought him back for this one.
Maybe so. But by this point, Spielberg's been working with Kaminski since
'93.
Yeah,
since Schindler's List. So
right.
Yeah. He's been working with Kaminski and Kaminski alone. So since '93. So that's 15 years of working with the same DP.
Yeah.
So Spielberg did want the lighting, like he wanted it to look like an indie film. So they did study it a lot. But you do see some like personal touches from Kaminski, like
I feel like this to me was a real strength of the movie, as you would expect, with when you're thinking about Kaminski and Spielberg. But I just you mentioned The Terminal earlier. The Terminal is not a great movie, I don't think.
No.
But there are moments in it where it's like, oh my gosh, this is why I go to the movies.
Sure.
And I think it's the Spielberg and Kaminski touch that they can bring movie magic to anything. And I think Crystal Skull is a much better movie than Terminal, but there are breathtaking moments where it's just like, for all of the camp and all of the cheesiness of this movie, they're making movie magic. It's just like, this is why we go to the movies. I don't know what some of the standout shots were for you, or if there are any, but there's kind of a recurring visual effect of, there'd be a character's figure silhouetted against a screen or against a wall, I
Mhm.
think of the scene where he's like tied down
Yeah.
in the tent and he's like forced to look at the skull, and there's a shot that backs up and you see, from the other side of maybe like the canvas,
Yeah.
the
It's
the
like a sheer sheet
yeah,
almost.
exactly. Like you
Yeah.
see the shadow, his silhouette, and then just him in the middle, like Harrison Ford's presence in the
Yeah.
middle of that silhouette, and just there were a handful of shots very similar to that, and
Yeah.
they're just
I actually noted
they're
that one.
breathtaking. Yeah, I mean,
I
they're
noted that particular one because I was watching it. I was like, oh, that's like sometimes when you're like doing a series like this, you really like tune into stuff like that. And so I was watching and I was like, oh, that's cool because
It really
Spalco's like, doing her like evil lecturing,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, yeah, it's Kaminsky playing with like light and shadow. It's something he
Yeah.
does a lot, and in that one, yeah, it's almost like, if you want to like be like put your critic, hat on and like try to analyze what's being said. In reality, they might have just been like, oh, this is a cool shot. But you could
Which is
even
kinda what
like,
I suspect. Yeah.
yeah, you could analyze like, oh, it's because like, Indy is like kind of a shadow of the man he used to be. He's older. And so you get like, you can see Indy through the sheet, but you also can see like his shadow on the sheet that you're like looking at him through because of the backlighting. Yeah, really, really, I loved that. Like there's several, like you said, of that sort of thing in the movie. And yeah, Kaminsky loves working with all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that was a treat for him to get to experience an Indiana Jones movie.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did. So I really liked the way this movie looked. Kaminsky, I like the way he lights, but there's certain things he does, like when he gets to like the super intense backlighting where it like creates this like flary, glary kind of look. So he does a lot of that in like Minority Report. And I honestly like don't like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Does it
so
just
that's
take
like
you out of the movie.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Minority Report, I was like, good grief. Like, can we stop getting like, can we see the characters and stop seeing them in silhouette
glares.
with like glares behind them? But cause I loved Minority Report, but like that was like one of my least favorite things about the movie was the way it looked.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really do a lot of that sort of thing in this movie. He does like, he puts a little personal touch, but like sticks pretty well to like the traditional like indie look, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, you also have like, he, in the special features, he talked about like how fun it was to shoot that, you have to introduce Indy with the hat. And so like I think it was, I think it might've been Kaminsky's idea. I'm not, don't, write that in ink because I'm not sure. This is just my vague memory, but he did talk about like really enjoying that setup with like the shadow on the car, putting the Indy hat on. So
You got a lot of mileage out of the hat in this movie.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Which I think, well, we may talk about this a little bit later. Thematically, like one of those final shots,
Yeah.
goes, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing about this movie is it's shot on film, shot and edited in film. So Spielberg, even in 2008, a lot of people are switching over and he's sticking to the film. So thankful for that. Let's dig into the production design and effects and stuff. There's a good bit to talk about here. Of course, with an indie movie, there's a lot of production and effects to talk about. But yeah, they did reproduce like the Doom Towns is what they were called from the 50s for nuclear testing. They did some I'm just kind of skipping down. They used some like miniature work for that. So they had like basically like miniature versions of those little neighborhoods that Ford is in.
Yeah.
and it really like a lot of times like effects teams will use miniatures for like explosion shots. And so instead of like doing a big explosions in like a full size set, they do the explosion stuff in a miniature. And it's better than doing the miniature and then adding it into like they're like adding like CGI or like adding it into another plate is like more appealing to the eye than like just CGIing the explosion.
Yeah.
Because you really need something with like some like weight to it to get the explosion to look good.
Right.
And
What did you think about the Doomtown?
it was fun. It's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things that's like, okay, I see what Spielberg's like definitely playing on his like kind of fractured relationship with suburbia.
Yeah.
Here there's definitely some like underlying thematic stuff going on here with that. And so it was fun. Like it's definitely like kind of if you're familiar with like Spielberg's relationship to like the suburbs and like how like he has like nostalgia for it, but also like struggles with, I guess, I don't know how good that is for creativity and for, you know, all that sort of thing. And, you know, he has some, I guess, like, you know, there's divorce tied to that for him, the kind of fracture of the nuclear family. And so, and then ironically, the nuclear bomb explodes the mannequin nuclear family watching the television set. So there's definitely something going on with that.
That was one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie. I just thought it was eerie and it was weird in a way that you don't, and just like unsettling in a way that you don't always expect to get from Spielberg. And I thought it was just so effective for all the reasons that you just said, but even just like the imagery of him walking around and amongst these models. It was just weird. I loved that sequence.
The weird mannequins and
yeah.
I was wondering, I didn't look it up, but I was wondering like, did they actually set these towns up like with electricity and with like, with a bunch of mannequins?
There's a scene or a shot where he tries to get a drink of water from the tap, and there's no water. So apparently they didn't run water.
Yeah, which makes sense. But well, you know, I was like, did they actually do like, did they dress all the mannequins up? Like, because if so, like, what's the point of that? I don't really know. And now that you say that, wasn't there a sprinkler going in one of the yards?
I think there was. Yeah, for whose benefit?
So they ran water somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, anyway, it's weird. I don't know. But yeah, they used a miniature to catch that explosion, and then you do have like the I think they said the nuke town was like a 1/8 scale, so it was like 60 by 100 feet. The little miniature town that they built, and then they had like 100-gallon air cannons under it that kind of like blasted the town, and and then the nuke was like basically Spielberg sent ILM like an original plate, which is just the original plate is just like the shot that they're going to add it to. And so you have Harrison Ford like walking up the hill and looking out, and there's like a space where they're like, okay, there's the space where you're supposed to add the nuke, the mushroom cloud. And so it looks pretty good. I think.
I thought so too. I thought it did too. Yeah. Thinking about like this, not to take the conversation off the rails, but one thing that did come to mind was thinking about, you know, maybe surprisingly, Spielberg came up in conversations and interviews I saw with Wes Anderson circa Asteroid City. And so much of that is, you know, kind of the same time period, there's nukes going off in the background
Yeah.
as they're testing, and then there's obviously the alien landing,
Yeah.
in Asteroid City. So I wonder what. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much this movie, if at all, was on Anderson's mind as he was thinking about Asteroid City.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
Sometimes
Wes
I think that
Anderson.
we as viewers make these connections before
Yeah.
the artists do.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely have like influences always, but Anderson can be a bit of an enigma so
Yeah, he's an enigma that it was very surprising whenever Anderson starts talking about Spielberg. For whatever reason, it's not a pairing that people would automatically,
yeah.
make.
But I mean,
But
he's one of those guys that's like,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I
Yeah,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say Anderson talks about the divorce of his parents being
Yeah. Mhm.
a pretty pivotal moment, and crops up in his work a lot. So
Yeah.
there's some common ground for sure.
Yeah, and I think like their application of the camera is fairly different, but I do think they both have like a very like intuitive sense of like once they're on a set of where to put, like they both do a lot, try to do a lot of like practical sets because they both have just an eye for space and where to position the camera and how the camera should move or not move. I've covered Wes Anderson on the podcast, so like thinking on like all of those films and then relating it to like Spielberg, there's definitely like a similar just intuitiveness of like just camera work between the two for sure.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily like everyone doesn't necessarily have that. Even like great directors are like not all of them have that to the same degree. Yeah, but I mean, there's so much detail in this movie that, and really like all indie films, but this is the one we're talking about. So like, it was fun. And there's like a whole special feature, thing with just props. They have the property master, Doug Harlocker, just going through all the props that they used. So he's like talking about like the swords they made for Spalco's character. They like made those swords in the sword box that she gets them out of from scratch. And Mutt's letter that he has is like written from scratch, and all the little like doodles from Oxley. Just I mean everything like he talked about like
attention to detail. And, all stuff that you would hope. It's like it makes for good world building. You would hope that filmmakers would go to those lengths. Yeah.
One of the funnier ones was that Lucas apparently has like carried the same comb around for a long time. And so like he took it out and was giving Shia LaBeouf pointers on comb etiquette.
Oh my goodness.
So I love that. I was like, man, can you imagine being on set and George Lucas being like, now here's how you handle a comb.
Here's how you properly handle a comb.
But yeah, I mean, they also like brought out some like stuff from the Lucas archives, like the knapsack that he uses was not like new. They had kind of pulled that out from the archives. The obviously the Ark of the Covenant was the same one they used in Raiders. That's in the warehouse scene. They also, I thought this was funny too. They recreated Moses's staff from the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston.
Yeah. And
it's one of the, like the objects that like busts out when the crates are like busting in the warehouse.
Funny.
Yeah. Which that's a really cool set, the whole like warehouse thing.
Yeah. What did you think of that? I thought so too.
Yeah. It's really cool. They did, so it's like, it's a mix of, it's one of those scenes where it's like a good mix of practical set and also like digital expansion. Like, so they have like the practical part where the actors are, and then like, it's kind of like there's blue screen and they kind of add in the depth
Gotcha.
digitally.
Yeah.
Which it was cool to see the ILM guys talking about that, because they talked about like the process, like the arduous process of like creating the objects, and they're like when they create them, they're just these like gray things, and then there's like a whole team that like adds color and texture to the objects.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a crazy process. And it's funny like that. It's like everyone's like, oh, digital, it must be easier. And it's like, no, it's probably actually easier to make the actual props and set.
Exactly.
That's why movies are so expensive these days, is because you have to pay all these guys to like create all these CGI objects.
Yeah, like whips.
Yeah. Thank goodness we didn't get that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great like practical effects and stunts. You're still getting like breakaway crates with like air cannons busting the crates open as the Jeep pulls through, and guys getting pulled back on cables, and stuntmen or whatever. They had to work with Shia on that Harley for like, I think they said they worked like every day for like 6 weeks with him on the Harley, because those things are heavy. They're not like super easy to like handle, especially when you have like Harrison Ford on the back of it doing stunts.
Adding some weight to it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's always fun to hear. The pyramid, like, yeah, let's talk about the pyramid set, because that's really, that really stands out as looking like really good in my opinion. I think so I will say, like, for the warehouse set, for the pyramid set, there are some sections where you get wide shots that don't look quite as good.
Right.
Because when they pull out those wide shots, you can really tell, like, okay, some of this is real and some of this is CGI.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's that's probably like the difference between like 2008 and 2018 of like
For sure.
where those like that CGI effects have come. Because today you probably would have a harder time telling the difference of like what was the practical set and what was CGI.
Yeah.
Whereas then it did kind of stand out to me. It was like, okay, like
A little bit of an eyesore.
yeah. But I mean, they did like the pyramid stuff where the actors are is like practical set, which is really cool.
Yeah, and just the sand flowing out from,
that was real. It was real sand flowing out, and the little pillars really do like go up,
closing on themselves.
Yeah, those are real. They built like they had like one miniature pyramid like to scale that they built on a Lazy Susan. So they kind of put that against a I guess a blue screen and filmed it like turning from different angles so that they could so they could kind of add that in where they needed to. So it's like you're not having to CGI a pyramid, you just add in the miniature. So a lot of like really smart decisions as far as that goes, which I think stands out. Like, they really just use CGI to like extend stuff. So like the pyramid, the actual like set of the pyramid is, not super tall, but in the movie it's really tall.
Right. No.
So sure. they kind of use digital like effects to like, extend that out where it looks like they're running down a lot more steps, when in reality the actors are just like running onto the floor.
Yeah. It's effective. I mean,
it
looks great.
This is another notable thing. This is the first time that the creepy crawlies are digital. So that's a little bit disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of the like trademarks of the indie movie is like, what is the creepy crawly going to be for this one?
Right. The big old ants, dude.
Yeah. And the
what did
ants,
you think, regardless of how believable it looked just because of the CGI, what did you think of just the concept of the ants in that sequence?
It's fine. I don't love it.
It ranks higher on the list in that movie of just kind of the camp. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty campy.
Yeah. It's just like, I think here's the difference to me, I think. So like all of the creepy crawly stuff is very like cheesy, campy stuff. Like with the snakes in the original, you've got the rats in Last Crusade, the bugs in Temple of Doom.
The rats in the Last Crusade, that is incredibly effective to me. We rewatched that one recently.
There's a
and
lot
it's just like,
of real rats.
Do you remember the scene or the shot where whatever, I can't remember, Schneider,
Yeah.
she's wearing her heels and she steps on a rat.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you picture it? I hadn't seen Crusade in I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, but I knew that was about to happen. And I told my wife, I was like, you might want to like look away because it's so unsettling. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, that was a creepy crawly sequence that just it works so well.
Yeah,
and the ants aren't anywhere close to that level.
No. And I think it's just like you want that you got to have like that trademark creepy crawly cheesy campy sort of situation in an indie movie, but when they're actual like real practical creepy crawly things, like it's fun. But when it's when it's all digital, it's kind of like it takes away the whole like actual
visceral element. You know.
Because that's the thing about like you think about like the bugs in Temple of Doom. It's like, yeah, this is like cheesy, like, oh, they're gonna be scared of the bugs, but like there's real bugs, and so you're kind of like, okay, I guess I kind of get it. They're pretty gross, you know. But like, yeah, that's totally lost with this, and you know, I mean, there's a degree to which like it's impressive that they were able to like create this simulation engine that like made all these ants and you know, but like at the end of the day, like it just looks and feels a little cheesy, and you know, I don't know, it just, that's one of the things that like works not great for me in the movie.
No, I agree, I'm with you.
I did like this. Spielberg in the special features was joking about he was like, oh, we need to add into to the bonus features me saying like, we need 150,000 more ants, because in like all the special features for the past films there, it's like, we need more snakes, we need more rats, we need more bugs.
More ants.
We need more ants. I thought that was very like self-aware humor, you know.
Yeah. For sure.
I guess the last thing with special effects is Pablo Hellman, the VFX supervisor, talked about the destruction of the temple was like the hardest thing to create in the whole movie for the digital effects. Which makes sense, because like if you think about like you have so many moving parts, and like none of that is real, none of that is obviously, the set isn't actually like breaking apart and being sucked up into a portal. So, you know, they have
believable somehow.
Yeah, and it's just like a lot of moving objects that are like hitting each other and breaking apart, and that's just like really difficult to create. You know, digitally. It looks okay, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, oh, that looks amazing, but it's fine. And then, you know, the B movie flying saucer is kind of like pretty campy, but like kind of fun, you know.
Yeah, I think it looks better and more, you know, just engrossing when it's lifting away from the inside of the temple.
Sure.
Versus that wide shot of the group watching it move, like fly away. That doesn't work as well when it's leaving the temple and they're inside of it, or maybe we're just seeing it from the inside. I don't remember.
Yeah.
That looks like, you know, pretty unnerving, like pretty pretty awe-inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they called it the garbage disposal 'cause like
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
on set. I think is what I remember them saying.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. But yeah, and then like I don't know the aliens. I'm totally fine with the idea of having aliens in the movie. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't bother me whatsoever. But like once you start getting close-ups of the CGI alien, it's kind of like, okay, this didn't age very well. Like it doesn't look
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that was one of the things I was just most fascinated to think about was, you know, a world in which an alien wound up in an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
And I like that happened.
Yeah.
You know, I
For
like
sure.
that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, like, I don't think the digital effects are bad in this movie. They just have some, like, poor applications, I think.
And I would by no means consider it like a detriment of the movie. There were some weak moments, but I think the sum total ends up in the positive.
Yeah. I mean, really just like the more like practical set pieces, the better. I mean, like even thinking about like the door, like the crystal skull door that was like a fully functioning, you know, scale door that like had those like, you know,
see the logs
moving.
down the side.
Yeah. Really cool. I mean, it just looks cool.
It does, yeah.
And so, you know, the more of that, the better in an Indiana Jones movie. And so like when you start to get too CGI, then it just kind of like takes away the fun of the Indiana Jones practical effects, I think. But yeah. A lot of fun sound in this movie. Ben Burt, I talked about him being back with to work with Ron Judkins, and Ben Burt talked about he hired his son to organize thousands of sounds from the archives of the older films.
Funny. That would be such a cool job to get hired.
So I mean, you're just listening to whips and guns and explosions
and Wilhelm screams.
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, I mean, the movie sounds good. It honestly, like, I don't have any complaints there. The other thing I thought was fun was Ben Burt talked about he had always wanted to do sound for a movie with a sword fight.
Oh, that's funny. And you got it.
Yeah. And so he was like, the Adventures of Don Juan with Errol Flynn was like his inspiration for the swords and the sounds and all that. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then, you know, there's also the electrical sound, like kind of electronic sounds you get when you're trying to like when you get into the alien stuff. And the one thing that he talked about that I thought was really cool was he said he was getting in his car in a grocery store parking lot, and the light post was like making this weird buzzing sound. And so he happened to have his recorder on him. And so he got out and recorded that. And that ended up being the sound that the skull makes.
That's cool.
Yeah. Which when you hear it, knowing that, you're like, oh, that does sound like a lamppost that's kind of like buzzing, you know? Yeah, I thought that was fun. As far as music goes, I mean, it's John Williams doing the indie stuff.
Yeah, it almost... I hate to say it, but it was almost diminishing returns for me.
Really?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if you felt that. Like,
that's fair, I guess.
And it was kind of like, and that's where we get that kind of movement. And that's where we get that kind of, and I don't know. To your point about John Williams knowing he's a smart guy and he knows how to borrow, it sounded like it could have been a Harry Potter theme at times. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's just like it's effective in that it's going to take you back. Like it's going to make you remember those early memories of watching Indiana Jones. And I think that's successful, you know. Yeah. But
yeah, the thing for me with John Williams is like the man's definitely like a genius. Like he's phenomenal. But I think when you start to like watch, like I am, like all these Spielberg movies in succession, and you're hearing like all these John Williams scores, You know, my wife and I watched the Harry Potter movies a while back. And, you know, I don't know, just hearing all the John Williams scores, you start to realize like he does kind of borrow sounds and movements and stuff a lot from himself.
Yeah. And
Which
I'll
is
give him the benefit
fine,
of the
but
doubt, and honestly, I would be inclined to give an artist like him the benefit of the doubt to say that there are like thematic purposes for that too. Like,
yeah, there are.
you know, I'm signaling back to another character and causing the viewer, you know, just like maybe even subliminally to remember this element of a previous character and find
Yeah,
them in
maybe.
the new one. So it's like I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in a lot of that. You know, I don't think it's just like lazy, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that. And like, I want to be careful because I don't want to sound like I'm like, you know, dissing John Williams. I mean,
No, yeah.
when
Or
you
be-
make something as transcendent as the ET score, then like you're a genius, you know?
Well, and I think that's why I'm inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. In
Yeah.
any art, like in any artist, you see similar elements crop up.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we talk about it with Spielberg. Like
Yeah.
Spielberg has these, you know, these little nuggets that pop up. And
Yeah.
so why would it not be the case
Mhm.
for Williams as well
Yeah.
in his composition? So
Yeah, I guess like the way like watching the way Spielberg like applies his Spielbergness to different like stories and different like settings and stuff is really fun. But like I guess like after a while, like hearing so many John Williams scores like back to back, you kind of get to be like, I wish he would do something like
there's some
radically
fatigue.
different. So that's why I loved the Catch Me If You Can score. Cause it's like that jazzy, it's a really fun score. And it's like, I think I mean, you have to put ET number one, but to me, the Catch Me If You Can score is like a close second, honestly, maybe even above the Jaws score.
Yeah.
Which it's hard not to put Jaws up there too, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, that one's really fun.
Well, and going back to the movie magic thing, I think, you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't say that, like, you've got, you know, Kaminsky, Spielberg, and Williams is obviously like a huge contributor just to that. Like, oh my goodness, this is why all these elements swell at once, and it's like, okay, this is why I go to the movies, you know. And so,
yeah. And then you know, going into like the next thing on my notes is the editing. Michael Kahn as his like tried and true editor. You know, I like to, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you've heard me say this before, but like editors are like the unsung heroes of movie making. But like really like the story is told in the edit ultimately. And, you know, Michael Kahn is just like, he's an incredible film editor. Like,
so,
yeah. And one of the crazy things is, which is I guess like the detail behind this fact is that usually Michael Kahn and Spielberg are like working on the edit as they go. But the movie was cut a week after the filming was completed. Like Michael Kahn was just like, all right, the movie's cut. I'm done.
that's
like,
crazy.
Yeah. And so, and there's like 8 months of post production. So
And on
part
a
of
week of that,
yeah, part of that is just like they had to get the movie cuts because there was so much digital work to be done, like adding that stuff in. But yeah, he's just great. You know, he's probably faster cutting actual film than most movies are like digitally editing.
Yeah, certainly. That's pretty.
Which I have a theory. I have a theory that I've stated before. You can let me know what you think about it. Is that movies used to turn around faster than they do now, and I think part of the problem is when you shoot on film, like there's only so much film you have like that you can pay for, like, and so you have a kind of a limited to a certain degree amount of footage to sift through. Whereas
Yeah.
with digital, it's like you have so much footage to sift through, and so it just
Totally. Yeah.
takes so much longer to get the edit done.
I think that's probably a pretty accurate assessment.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much the production and post. 8 months of posts. It's just all them adding the digital stuff to the movie. The movie presented the first showing of it was at the Cannes Film Festival in France, May 18th, 2008. He had done this several times,
Yeah.
like presented it not in competition
Yeah.
for the festival. Like E.T. was presented at a competition at Cannes, premiered. So he kind of does that. But this is where like the Shia stuff comes in. Is like in the press stuff, like leading up to the film release, there had already been some like bad stuff like in the air of like the Mutt character not being great. And so like Shia LaBeouf, I guess to save face, it starts like saying, apparently at one point he said something to the degree of like, he didn't know he was going to be like the Jar Jar Binks of the Indiana Jones movies.
I don't think that's fair to say.
And no. And so like from Spielberg gave him like the "we're selling cars" kind of speech, like you can't do that. And I really just think like he just kind of lost the Spielberg push after that. Like Spielberg was kind of like, if this is what I'm going to have to deal with, no thanks. And we never really got.
It's hard not to let your mind wander and think, what if that dynamic had not been maybe so sour?
What if Shia had like nailed it in the press tour,
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, and what's a bummer about that is, I don't know what you think about this, is the dynamic between Mutt and Indy on the same level as Indy and Sean Connery? No. But I really liked the Mutt character, and I thought he had some really moving moments, I really thought that he was a pretty good character.
Yeah. Well, Shia, like, say what you will about him, but like the dude can like nail emotional moments.
Yeah.
He can tap into like teary eyes like nobody else. Like the dude can sell the emotions.
He can, and he even had just like I thought that the key moments for his character development, he also hit. Like the scene where it's towards the end, it's in kind of like the final sequence where they've traversed the spiral staircase down through the pyramid, and they're kind of like mucking about in the water, and no one's like quite sure where to go next. And Shia's like, "Come on, guys, let's go this way."
Yeah.
And you can see him trying to take lead, and then he kind of, I don't remember exactly what he says or what he does, but he says, "Come on, like let's go this way," and then he wavers a little bit and is like, "Right, like this way." And I just thought like that was kind of like a like father like son moment where it's like act first, then figure out the ramifications, or if you're way off base, second.
Yeah.
But it also just shows like him stepping up, taking charge of the group, and I thought that was great. I thought oh my goodness, I laughed so hard watching it the other night when they're Harrison has just like reverse blow darted the one guy, which I thought was funny. And Shia says like, he's like, "What? Like, aren't you a?" And he kind of
You're
pauses.
a professor? Yeah.
He's like, "A teacher?" And I just like the timing of his like that hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was brilliant. Like it's so, the line readings are far from just there's a lot of character infused in some of those line readings.
Yeah, and I think it's more of the like some of the quippy one line, or like just some of the things he says is very like where the like some of the criticism comes is like, I don't know, him being Shia and being like, oh, you're just a professor, I don't know. Some of that stuff I think is where he gets criticism. But like at the end of the day, like I think the problem with the character is not Shia. I think it's just not a very like well-rounded character. It's in the writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, oh gosh, the most egregious to me moment in the entire movie is Shia becoming Tarzan. Like, that's rough, dude. It's like, what are we doing here? And it's like, okay, that is certainly the most Jar Jar Binks moment in the movie.
Yeah,
but
sure.
That's not Shia's fault. Like,
no.
And I think
he's just like, oh, they told me to go swing on these vines, so I guess I will.
Totally. And I thought that, it far from undermines the merits of the performance and even the character. I thought the character was pretty, all things considered, well-rounded.
Yeah, and while we're on the subject, there's definitely, I think when they started this movie, I do definitely think there was like maybe the inkling of the idea of like maybe Shia can take the mantle of this franchise and maybe we can keep getting stuff out of it. Yeah. Like that had to have been
somewhere on the back burner.
Yeah, in the air,
Well, dude, I don't know if now is the time to talk about it. Maybe it's not, but
sure, let's do it. The ending?
No, I mean, just that last shot.
Yeah.
Like where he starts to pick up the hat and it's like,
and he snatches it.
He snatches it away. It's like there's only one Indy.
Yeah.
So
there's just one.
You wonder, like, maybe that was a conversation somewhere, or even just like we're all kind of thinking the same thing or wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they, the filmmakers picked a side. Like,
they did.
There's one Indy, because
there was two possible things you could do there. One is like, Shia puts on the hat and like, Harrison Ford kind of gives him like the wink, thumbs up, like, dude, you're it now. I'm going off to my married life.
This is the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not what they went with. They went with him snatching it away from him. Yeah. I'm like, this is so like metatextual of like
so winking.
Which I don't know how on purpose that was. We'll probably never know.
Well, and I think that's been a takeaway of this conversation thus far for me is there are things that I just read into.
Yeah.
But and as I'm watching the movie,
it's hard not to.
As I'm watching the movie, I'm noticing all sorts of things. It's like, oh man, well, why was Spielberg interested in this? Like, why, what maybe led him to think now is the time to fuse Indiana Jones with kind of this transcendent, image of an alien. Like, but then to find out, it's like, oh no, that's something that Lucas wanted all along. It's like, okay. Is there anything to think about now? But it's so funny how we do that.
Oh yeah. This the movie was released May 22nd of 2008. It opened to $151 million. Really good opening weekend. So it had a $185 million budget. So, that's like the dream to like almost make back your budget for a big budget movie like that opening weekend. But it ended with 317 million domestic, 790.6 million worldwide box office. So good good return, I think, for us, for an Indiana Jones movie. I guess like maybe like you might expect more, but for a movie that like was, which we'll talk about in a second, not the best received critically.
Right.
Pretty good return. It was like the third biggest hit of 2008. It was like top 20 all-time box office at the time of its release. Yeah.
That idea of it being, well, actually, I'll let you get to the next thing that you're gonna say before I jump in.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm privy to some of your notes, so I apologize. I'm just kind of following.
No,
along.
do it. Yeah.
But like the idea of it being the first Indiana Jones movie with the internet is a fascinating idea. And I think like, so in 2008, I would have been like 13 years old, and I knew pretty quickly, and I don't even know that I was that tapped into what the broader opinion of the movie was, but at 13 in 2008, I was pretty aware that people were broadly viewing the movie as kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. So I'll say some people were enthusiastic. So Roger Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times, he liked the movie.
I noticed that.
Yeah, 3.5 stars out of 4. That's a good rating. For an Ebert, Ebert was always an indie fan, but Ebert, when he felt like something missed the mark, he would say, he wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't like he
wasn't
just
bashful. No.
Yeah, he wasn't just going to give it a pass just because it was an indie movie.
Right.
Empire loved it. Other ones commended the movie. They talked about some of the quibbles, the Mutt character, the kind of predictability of the plot, that sort of stuff, which is, I guess, fair, but for a movie like this, but not super negative. But when it came to the internet talk of the movie, not so kind. And like you said, this is the first indie movie in the internet age. It's the beginnings of the meme, probably.
Yeah.
We didn't call it that back then.
No, I'm wondering. That's what I was wondering how much of it would have played what we would call a meme now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nuking the fridge.
Totally. That
became
that lives on. Yeah.
Yeah. It became a phrase that was associated with really screwing your movie up. It became synonymous with a movie having made some bad choices. Oh, they really nuked the fridge. And so, I mean, that's a meme,
Yeah. Yeah. That's far from the most laughable moment in the movie.
Yeah. I like that moment, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I do too.
I like is it ridiculous? Yeah, it's ridiculous. But what isn't ridiculous in Indiana Jones movies?
Universe? Yeah.
Yeah, and Spielberg did take the blame for that. I think he put the MacGuffin blame on Lucas, but he did say oh, I was behind the fridge nuking. That was my idea. But I don't know. I like the fridge nuking.
I don't. It's funny. It's no more. Yeah, it's no more ridiculous than so many of the other things that we get in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, but I mean, it's wild. This movie has a 2.7 on Letterboxd.
I know.
Which is so low. I don't get it. It's got a 65 Metascore, surprisingly, which
I noticed it was in the green on Metascore, which I was surprised by.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that too, honestly. But 2.7 on Letterboxd is super, super low. And I don't really know why. I don't know. I just don't get it. It didn't get any awards, really. I mean, it got some.
Is there anything that you would have that you would think would be award worthy from that movie?
The sound.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing that I would think. Because the effect, I don't know. It's hard. So for effects wise, it's hard to take my brain back to 2008 effects.
For sure.
So like with these effects looked really good
Hold
in
up,
2008.
Yeah.
And they were doing some stuff that was like pretty, like the ants and the like the temple destruction at the end. Like would that stuff been enough that it should have like, I don't know. I would have to look at like what other films were getting nominated for that.
Yeah.
For the 2009 Oscars, I guess. But yeah, maybe effects, but definitely sound. I mean, I don't know. Other than that, like, I don't know. Like, it's not a director or best picture or acting or like, it's not getting any of those, and it doesn't really need that. Like,
no.
I mean, production design, you might could see.
I thought there were some really, really amazing like set pieces and props.
Yeah. So, but like even like costume or hair and makeup, I guess like you could see them just being like, oh, they're just like recreating what they have already created.
Yeah.
So you don't need to get rewarded for that. So
did you notice the costume designer was Mary Zophers, who was a frequent collaborator of the Coens?
So she's collaborated with Spielberg
before. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to see. I'm trying to pull up her. But I know her name, and so I know like she
stands
definitely
out
done.
when you see her. Yeah.
Yeah. She was on The Terminal.
Yeah. Okay.
The costume designer for The Terminal. It seems like she did more than that, but I'm not seeing any other things. So sometimes it's funny. So, Letterboxd, because I'm on Letterboxd. Sometimes Letterboxd doesn't get all of the crew. Oh, Catch Me If You Can. That was the big one.
Yeah.
Because Catch Me If You Can has tons and tons of extras, and and it's period. So, she was in the special features for that, talking about costuming. So
yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, but I mean the costumes are good, but it's like
you're just handed these iconic Indiana Jones
right
costumes. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I don't think it necessarily deserved any awards. But yeah. I guess like the last thing before we just like dig into like other things we thought about the movie is just about like so the fifth Indiana Jones was already like probably being talked about back then. So 2020, in February 2020 was when we got the news that Spielberg, there would be a fifth Indiana Jones, but Spielberg would not be directing it. So I don't know if you remember that, but
I do. Yeah.
I was tuned into that sort of thing at that time. So that's one of the things I remember is like, oh man, they're going to do Indiana Jones without Spielberg. That's weird. But we're not going to be covering Dial of Destiny, but I liked Dial of Destiny.
So truthfully, I never saw it either. I didn't have a huge interest in seeing it.
It's actually really good.
And that's my position on it is maybe softened a little bit just based on the reception. But knowing that Spielberg wasn't attached to it, and then also just kind of hearing about some of the de-aging, there was just a lot of my just kind of like alarm bells went off, and I kind of like deprioritized it in the years viewing and just haven't got back to it since. But
yeah, I kind of feel the same. I feel very similar to it as I do about this one.
Okay.
I feel like it's I mean, like it's sort of a similar thing. So the de-aging thing I would equate to like the ants or the alien CGI. It's like, is it the best? Like, no, but like it doesn't detract like a ton from the movie. It's just like, it's one of those elements of the movie that makes it like, okay, yeah, it's not on the same level as like the originals, but it's still really good. And it like digs into kind of like the theme of like getting old even more, you know.
Yeah, this one started to do that a little bit, but
It did.
yeah.
It wasn't heavy-handed with it,
No, it certainly wasn't. Yeah. And honestly,
which I
felt like,
appreciated.
yeah, certainly. To your point, I wonder if that's because they knew that there was going to be more down the line.
Maybe, yeah. It's hard to know. But especially since I'm not like doing research on Dial of Destiny, so I don't really know when the inception of it.
Of that one.
Yeah. But no, I would definitely like check it out. Yeah, it'd be fun to watch it. So I rewatched all of the movies before I went and saw that one. It's so back in, what was that, 2022 or 2020, 2023? It was 23. Yeah, because that year I rewatched all of the indie movies, and then I rewatched all of the Mission Impossible movies.
Oh, we watched all the Mission. Yeah.
And on my birthday, I did a double feature at the theater. I told my wife, I was like, for my birthday, I want to go to the theater and see Dial of Destiny and Dead Reckoning. And I saw them. I watched them back to back at the theater.
Which one did you like more?
Oh, Dead Reckoning for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's probably my like second or third favorite Mission Impossible.
Dude. Yeah, we rewatched all of the Mission Impossible movies last year in build up to Dead Reckoning, and dude, it was just a blast.
Yeah,
and I say rewatched. I had not seen most of them.
Yeah, there was a couple I hadn't seen before. Yeah.
They were great.
Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show.
Yeah, let's dig into, I mean, we've talked about a lot of this stuff already that I have in the notes. You know, quibbles, the CGI stuff, maybe not aging the best. You know, there's an element of like that this really just can't live up to some of the like their originals, so it's got that weight on it to begin with, you know. The plot can be like a bit indecipherable.
For sure.
I will say, like, as I was watching the movie, I kind of noted in my mind, I was like, this does get back to a lot of the fun, like, following clues that, like, it's one of the reasons, like, I like Temple of Doom probably the least out of all the indie movies, is because it got away from, like, the let's follow the archaeological clues kind of element, and this really, like, leans into that a good bit, which is fun. But one of the things so here's a quibble we haven't really talked about, that, like, the original trilogy is, like, masterful with, that I think this one kind of, like, loses a little bit, is and it's something that, like, Spielberg, especially, like, in the first stretch of his career was really good at. You have action that draws out just the right amount of time, and then you have a slow down scene where, like, you slow down, you get maybe some more exposition, you get a little bit of character development, and then you pick back up with some more action. And this movie, I feel like, draws out some of the action sequences just way too long. Without giving you the break you need. Like, I found myself, like, in the biggest one is probably, like, the jungle chase scene. I found myself, like, kind of being like, okay, when is this? When are we going to get to something else, you know? So I think that's probably a weakness. One of the weaknesses of the movie is just, like, it doesn't have the, like, phenomenal pacing like the past ones did.
Pace was the exact word that came to mind. I think of, like, in The Last Crusade, there's the boat chase scene, which is, just, to your point, the perfect length. And a great chase scene.
Yeah.
And then it ends with a very brief bit of exposition between Indy and the one of the men who is a part of the group that has just been tasked with protecting the Grail.
Yeah.
And he just explains why he was chasing Indy, and it's like that was great. And it just I don't know if you can picture it, but the boat is like sidling up to the dock.
Yeah.
And Indy lets that individual off. That was just it was exactly what you just said. It's like just kind of like a deload moment from the chase scene that we don't really get anything like that in this movie.
Yeah. It's it's just there's an element to where it just isn't gonna it is not gonna add up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you have any other quibbles?
I feel like we hit on a lot of them. Just a lot of like over expositing. At one point I was like, am I supposed to be keeping up with the lore? Like, am I supposed to be tracking? There's a little bit of that. But
yeah, it might be just because out of all the things they've covered, this is the one with like the weirdest, like least like rooted in reality lore.
For sure. Yeah, certainly.
Well, I guess Temple of Doom is a little bit of that, but like I said, it kind of doesn't have as much of that kind of like archaeological stuff in that one.
Yeah.
Spielberg distinctives I love to hit on.
Mm-hmm.
This is really just like it's got all of them.
I wrote in all caps lens flares.
Okay. I didn't notice though. I didn't even notice that.
Like I noticed so many.
Spielberg doesn't do a ton of that. Kaminsky does. That's more of a Kaminsky thing, I would say.
Yeah, and I think I've just conflated the two of them.
Yeah, which is fair. I mean, they're.
It's hard for me to separate them in my mind. Like their styles and their trademarks have just become so enmeshed with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you watch all the movies up to 93 before Schindler's List, it's really like there's not that's not something he's big on.
No, yeah, you're definitely right.
The lens flare king to me has always been J.J. Abrams. That dude loves lens flares.
I've thought about that, but I've also thought I've always assumed that was because he loves Spielberg.
Yeah,
and he's just riffing on Spielberg.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's always been my assumption.
Yeah, I think
he did come to mind watching this movie. I think of like the lens flares that you see in like Super 8.
Yeah.
But which is a Spielberg nod? I
think it's maybe just because J.J. Abrams does them with less quality than Spielberg does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you've got shadows and silhouettes and reflections and low angle close-ups, just incredible composition, and geography is a little hit or miss in this movie. Like the jungle scene just overall just doesn't work incredibly well. It's hard to keep up with like what's going
just a
on.
Sense of like, where are we?
Yeah. Which is usually like a strength of Spielberg. It's like, it's funny because I talked about in the Munich episode last week, which as we're recording is not released yet. So you wouldn't know, nor will, but the listeners hopefully will have listened to it maybe. But I talked about how like that movie is like a masterclass of geography and space and composition. It's just like, to me, it's Spielberg like at the top of his game as far as showing the audience the space and letting them know like where everyone is and what's going on where. It's really like incredible. And then to go to this movie and it's like, I don't know, I feel like he got a little bit lazy with it. It's kind of harder to keep up with stuff.
I feel like one of the sequences that I really liked was the sequence in the Mayan ruins where they do combat the dart blowers. Like
the graveyard.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like that was a sequence where you got a sense of the scope and scale of the set piece, and and where the characters were in relation to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, you're right. There wasn't like a very strong sense of geography or place.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The other I guess the only other like big distinctive or like image that like we haven't talked a lot about was the opening. And how like that both like looks incredible
Mm-hmm.
and also like kind of sets up the theme at the same time of like Americans versus Russians, like
Yeah.
in a very like, you know, subtle way, but definitely
Mhm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, that scene is like that probably like the best shot sequence of the whole movie
Yeah,
is
it's
the
a
camera
really
moving in and
strong
out of those
opening.
vehicles.
Yeah, it's a really strong opening.
Yeah. And you get like reflections and hubcaps and it just like
Yeah.
it looks so good.
I agree. I had some of those same exact thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like thematically we've hit on a few things. At the end of the day, there's not like anything incredibly deep about Indiana Jones movies. Like there's underlying themes that are there for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, they're adventure movies that are fun to
sure.
watch.
I don't know if you follow Matt Singer on Letterboxd, but after watching this, I went back and just saw what some of those people had said about it, and he had a quote about this movie. So he gave this movie originally 2 stars, and then at some point in the past had bumped it up to 2.5. And one of his most recent rewatch, he said, and I wrote it down because I thought it was really interesting. He said, "I have a feeling that every Steven Spielberg movie gets a little more interesting after you watch The Fabelmans, even his less successful works like this one. For example, the father issues in The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull were always there on the surface, but some of the specific details only resonate now, like how Mutt dropped out of college and how Indy is furious about that and demands he goes back to school, foreshadowing the way Bert Fabelman will demand Sammy stay in school instead of pursuing his filmmaking dreams."
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like those are some of the Spielbergisms and just like the themes and ideas that he's obsessed with. I think that's a like if you were to retroactively go back and watch all of his movies, you'd see them.
Oh yeah.
You know, you'd see them here.
It's
And
there in all of
for
them
sure.
almost.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, this movie, it gets at some of the paranoia that was present in sort of the late 50s, and you know, doing a little bit of number crunching, Spielberg would have been 11 in 1957.
Yeah.
So, you know, if Spielberg at 61 or whatever you said he was sent himself back to his 11-year-old, like, you know, I'm sure he's thinking about his dad, and I'm sure he's thinking about, you know, what it must have felt like to hear just the country in a panic. You know, I think he's not very heavy-handed with any of that, but I think that's there. And I think that's all just really, like, you love to see that stuff crop up again and again in any artist's work, because it's a reminder that there's intention, you know, and even these just like, so, you know, this is one of the least highbrow entries into his canon, but he's still himself, like he's still Spielberg. I loved seeing some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My closing thought on this one is just, it kind of deals with that ending. And, you know, we've talked about like aliens, like in an Indiana Jones movie is not like that crazy. I mean, they've had ideas for they've had ideas for like a haunted castle Indiana Jones movie. They've had ideas for like a Lost World dinosaur Indiana Jones. So all these ideas like are very silly. And yeah, so aliens is really not that far fetched.
Yeah.
When you have like ghostly ghouls coming out of the Ark of the Covenant to end a movie, like, is aliens like that much more far fetched than that?
Sure.
I don't.
Yeah,
not
for sure.
Not to me.
Yeah.
But my final thought that relates to that is just Spielberg's fascination with film, like as an art form. There's, I wrote down, what better way to symbolize the importance of the art form you love than far advanced multidimensional aliens who identify with your hero's occupation. There's the line that Indy has where he says they were archaeologists.
Yeah.
He finds these beings that are so far beyond us, and they're interested in the same thing he is as a character. And to me, that's like the perfect like symbolism for Spielberg and his like fascination with the art form that he loves. And just thinking like, if there are beings that are higher, like, wouldn't it be incredible if they were interested in the same thing that I'm interested in?
Yeah. I think that is a good point. One of the most lasting thoughts that I had was, it's still playing with like Indy's faith, and he's seen so much, but it's like he can explain so much of it as an intellectual, but then he also can't explain so much of what he's seen. And there was a line, somebody, and it might be Miriam, but it's like, why are you still not believing what you're seeing?
Yeah.
And that's maybe, at the start of the final third of the movie. So it's a question that is on our minds as we get to the movie's climax. And when they're in that like throne room or whatever it is, he is, Kate Blanchett's character has gone up to the figure on the throne.
Yeah.
And she says something along the lines of like, do you not believe?
Yeah.
And he says, I believe, that's why I'm down here.
Yeah.
And on one hand you'd say, okay, well, that's just like a one-liner. But it really struck me as like a real genuine sense of reverence. He's like, no, I believe. Like, that's why I'm a lot further away from that.
Staying away.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. And I thought that was like just so like some really nice consistency, and even like maybe even rounding his character out a little bit more. Like that to me of like, oh, I believe, that's why I'm down here.
Yeah.
Is as much of a profession of faith as we've seen. That as we've got
Indy.
from Indy
Yeah.
in the franchise, thus far again.
Well, I'll say this:
that was a really great touch.
if you like that, then I think you're going to really like Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
So you need to go see it, and then whenever you finally see it, shoot me a text and let me know if you liked it.
I will. I sure will.
Ratings. This is, I have this as like a 3.5 stars.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
It's an enjoyable, like solid, good movie in my opinion, and I'm sad that so many people have it rated so low. But
Ebert had it right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like incredibly high up my like Spielberg rankings. It's kind of like middling, but but yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Agreed. Thanks for the occasion for the rewatch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really all I've got for this week. I think we've hit on pretty much, we've exhausted our Kingdom of the Crystal Skull talk. But we will be jumping into a Harrison Ford performances movie draft. For me and Jacob, it'll be in just a few moments. For you, the listener, it'll be next week. But yeah, I'm excited about that. That'll be fun. So look forward to that. And then hopefully we'll be jumping into the adventures of Tintin after that, getting into the 2010s. So that'll be fun. But Jacob, you had mentioned earlier Instagram is the best place to follow you. What's the handle they should follow there?
Yeah, Lean Forward Pub for Lean Forward.
Okay.
And there are links there to the actual Substack. And then the conversation with Jacob Allen for the podcast about Bob Dylan and John Lennon. And there are links there as well to Spotify and Apple Music.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll make sure to put those in the episode description. So you can just click the links, go follow Jacob and his Substack and his podcasts, and looking forward to hearing more. Yeah. Excited about hearing more about Dylan and John Lennon. It's not something I'm familiar with, so I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, that's ripe for a lot of just really interesting discussions. So yeah, I'm excited to bring it out.
Sweet. Well, that's really all we have for this week. I have been Eli Price for Jacob Allen. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We'll see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.